to our show. Welcome to our show. It's a good show. Big, big shoe. It's really huge.
Hi, I'm Dylan Mars Greenberg, and this is Talkin Troma with Zack.
Big, big shoe. It's really huge. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Tromaville, and welcome to episode 19 of Talkin Troma with your host, me, Zack. The show where me and a special guest turn into dolphins and exchange hearts by watching a Troma film and then paired with a non-Troma title for a fantasy double feature. But first, let me introduce my special guest. Shakespeare Shitstorm, filmmaker of several movies and acclaimed music videos, and musician with several projects, including Theophobia, and she has a new album out now, BADWORLD. Let me introduce to you, Dylan Mars Greenberg.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I feel like it's been a long time coming for you to come on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
So I always like to know how you got introduced to Troma.
Okay, so I would have been like 9 or 10, and my dad, I think some of my dad's friends were like, oh, like Dylan would love Troma, because I just like, I don't know, since I was really little, I was always drawn to just anything that was like weird or artsy or like kind of like campy. Like it just seemed kind of obvious that like I was always just super drawn to camp. And I think it was like my dad took me to his job and he sat me down in front of a computer and he was kind of like, you know, find a movie to watch or something like online. And I think someone had uploaded The Toxic Avenger to Google Video. So I actually think I watched it for the first time there. And then I think maybe I rented it again. And then I rented all the sequels. And then I, you know, found out about like Class of Nukem High and all of those. Yeah, and I mean, from there, I just kind of started watching like every Troma movie I could find.
That's awesome. And were you at the same time when you were kind of discovering these? I mean, you said you were younger, like 9 or 10, but were you also making movies at that time?
Most notably, I made this short film when I know for a fact I was 9 years old. That was inspired by Eraserhead.
Oh, wow.
And there was this film program that you couldn't get into until you were 10. It was like a kids' film program. And I really wanted to get in there, even though I was only 9. And yeah, it was like, you know, maybe ages 10 to 15. You could like 10 was like, I think even cutting it, but they sent my dad, I think sent them this. I mean, it's not like it was some great movie, but it's still, they were just like, this 9-year-old made a movie like inspired by Eraserhead.
I kind of want to see it. Is that out there to watch?
I have it on, I don't know if it's public, but I have a link. I think it might be online somewhere.
You have to send that to me. That sounds pretty interesting.
What's funny is like I was watching David Lynch movies, but like I couldn't even like spell properly yet. So I named the movie Onk, like the symbol.
Yeah.
But I spelled it wrong.
I'm watching David Lynch stuff now and I can't spell right. So
yeah. But yeah, I was a funny kid because I feel like I'd watch something like that and then I would just turn on Nickelodeon. And to me, it was like the same thing. It was like, it's like something I like.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is actually going off topic now because this isn't about Troma, but.
Oh, that's fine.
Anyway, yeah, once I found out about Troma, I remember I saw Citizen Toxic and I was like, holy shit, this must be the most disgusting movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. This is so cool.
Yeah, that one definitely surprised me too when I saw that one in the theater, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh wow. Yeah, like I just remember watching that as a kid and being like, holy shit.
But one thing I will say about like your movies that I've seen and how you mentioned like you'd watch Eraserhead and then go like right into Nickelodeon. I feel like that style like comes across like those influences come across in your films that you make, where like it would be like a Nickelodeon produced Eraserhead type movie. You have
well, I have now worked for Cartoon Network, so I
yeah,
have in fact
on
done,
Adult Swim, right?
Yeah. So I now have Cartoon Network produced.
Tell me a
sort of
little bit
horror
about that
comedy
one.
show.
Tell me a little bit about that one. That's the puppeteer's assistant, right?
Yes. It was honestly based on like a bit I would just do with my friends, where I would kind of just like say to people randomly, I would be like, did you know that like if you feed puppets like salt water, that they'll turn evil? And you'd think it would be easy not to feed a puppet salt water, except that they beg you for it. And I don't know, I just used to tell that to people and it seemed to get a reaction. And then, yeah, I was kind of going down a long list of things to pitch to Dave Hughes, who runs, that division of Adult Swim where they kind of, give, small budgets to filmmakers to make these shorts, which unfortunately is now getting much smaller. I think the budgets are even becoming tighter than they were.
Yeah.
Because they've been bought out by a few different companies. Yeah, and he rejected like I think 3 of my ideas, and I thought, oh fuck, I'm done now. I'm done for. They're not going to take anything I come up with. And then I pitched them that, and they were like, okay, yeah, this works, because we feel like this could be like a good short form.
Nice
thing.
Yeah, I saw it online. The visuals in it are incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's also very much due to Hannah Shilsky, who is a fantastic artist who I actually met on Shitstorm.
Oh, cool.
Hannah plays like 3 roles in that movie, actually. Or possibly more. She's really talented. She makes, first off, I found out that she makes her own like silicone masks or like latex masks, and she wears one in the movie. She wears this mask of like this bird person that she made. It looks like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, but it's a bird. And she made it. And she also plays a hooker in one scene. She gets a ninja star thrown into her head. She plays like a street like riffraff.
Yeah.
I think she also did her own makeup and had like her teeth jutting out of her mouth. But anyway, yeah, she was like, yeah, I also do like CGI. Like I'm like a professional like computer graphics like designer. So she built the puppets based on drawings that my partner Glitter Macabre made. My friend Merlin built this miniature, and then we actually of the house, and then we actually Hannah basically scanned the miniature into the CGI, and then we were actually using like a CGI scan of a real existing miniature. Which is an unusual thing I'd never done before. But yeah, I had like a really great team of people who were all super enthusiastic about it, and worked to make it happen.
And you don't just do short films too. You have several features, bunch of which are on Troma now. I was lucky enough to see one of them in person with a room full of people. Dark.
Oh Prism. Yeah, you saw Dark Prism, yeah.
And that has Amanda Flowers, who's in Shitstorm.
Yes. She's
Probably
in most of my movies.
another one of yours, and you made it with Reverend Jin, who's in Terror Firmer, but Werewolf Bitches from Outer Space.
Yeah, that's probably my most Troma-like movie.
It's really funny. That
I
was
mean,
also on,
and that's very much a Reverend Jen film. Who I actually, you should have her on the show. She's fucking. I was just hanging out with her. She's so funny.
oh, awesome.
She's my godmother, by the way.
That's sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, I made that with her. She wrote this most of pretty much the entire script. She wrote. I wrote a few extra scenes, to kind of tie the film together because it was originally being directed by someone else who then left the project and actually stole some of the footage. And then I kind of came in and I was kind of the fixer-upper. And then I kind of created some action scenes and then some exposition scenes and a number of special effects and stuff to kind of tie it together, turn it into a 70-minute movie. But for the most part, we stuck pretty closely to Reverend Jen's script. I mean, it's a very tight film because she's a very good writer. And she's also written several published books, and she's a very accomplished and a really accomplished painter and performance artist and so much.
I'll have to look more into her books. That the movie was really funny. I had a good time with that one.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
And then another one of your films is on there, which looks like it just got like a VHS release, ReAgitator.
Yes, that's my most recent released film, although Amityville Vanishing Point, which is my movie I made a while ago. People occasionally contact me about Amityville Vanishing Point because it's been on some lists of like worst movies ever made, which I think is great because, I mean, if that keeps up, I'm hoping I can eventually get it onto the IMDb bottom 100 because then you start making money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really, at this point, if you're making a low-budget movie, that's what you want to strive for. Otherwise, you're not going to make shit. People don't pay to see good movies anymore. People pay to see The Room. They don't pay to see fucking, a $10,000 art film that's actually gets good reviews. But it's like for instance, Virgin Beasts, people aren't going to spend money to see that. But if Virgin Beasts was if fucking like the nostalgia critic was lambasting it, then people would fucking see it and they'd have midnight like Birdemic or something, like, you know what I'm saying? Or Troll 2. Like, so anyway, people tend to hit me up about it from time to time, and every time they do now, I just make up these stories that never happened about it. Like I said that it was funded by this company that then disappeared, and then the guy who ran the company broke out of prison. He like got arrested because he was embezzling money, and he like murdered a clown and like took his clothes and dressed up as a circus clown and like wandered around like America for a year, and then he was caught again. And that's how Amityville Vanishing Point got made. So there's now a bunch of articles saying that's what happened. Like that's official awesome story now. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Cause I just I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's just like, how did you make an Amityville movie? It's like, the honest truth was I was sick of no one watching my movies. And I was like, if I put Amityville in front of this movie, people will watch it. And I also wanted to make a movie in 7 days. I wanted to see if I could do it. And I wanted to make it on a camcorder. And I thought it was a good, I mean, I wasn't trying to make something bad. I and there are some people who like it, and there's some people who get, I was kind of trying to do a David Lynch thing, and I was inspired by Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive, and it was kind of supposed to be a movie like that. And I think, obviously people took it the wrong way. It really has nothing to do with that. Very soon, possibly either this summer or this Halloween, my next feature film will finally be out. It's been 5 years in the making. Spirit Riser.
Yes.
But yeah, ReAgitator, that's another film that stars Amanda. That's also very Troma. So Spirit Riser, yeah, I would call it a low budget, but it's a $10,000 epic. It's massive in scope, many locations, huge ensemble cast. There's music, there's martial arts fighting, there's drama, there's horror, obviously. And yeah, I mean it's a film about two sisters who are separated by an explosion. And one of them ends up in California with memory loss, and she doesn't know who she is. And the other sister is wandering around New York, and she is the other sister's very young. The other sister's played by my own actual little sister.
Oh, cool.
Named Summer Greenberg. Yeah, and basically they both go on these separate journeys, and then they have to reunite, basically. And along the way they encounter a lot of different characters, and they basically both discover that they have the ability to raise spirits from the dead.
Yeah.
Now, one of them has to learn that ability, the other has to rediscover that ability. And the spirits, when they're raised from the dead, they fight the evil spirits, and they have martial arts battles. And this is due in part also to Jesse Youngbay, who is also the fight coordinator on Shitstorm.
Nice.
Who is one of the stars of Spirit Riser and plays the main spirit, which is a ninja spirit. And he also coordinated all the fights in this film, whether he was in them or not. So there's these spectacular, very, very good fight scenes, unlike my previous films where I would kind of just have people randomly throw punches and do my best to do it myself. These are all coordinated, or everything on the East Coast is coordinated by Jesse. So there are these really spectacular, grand fight scenes, and they meet Shuri Curry from the Runaways.
Oh, cool.
And she keeps foster girls, and she becomes kind of a protector. And Kansas Bowling and Parker Love Bowling I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, they for those out there who haven't seen, Kansas did a film called BC Butcher that's on Troma now.
Yeah, for Troma.
And they're in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well as the Manson Girls.
And I just produced Kansas's new film Cuddly Toys, which is probably going to be one of the most shocking films to come out when it does.
Did she shoot it on 16 like her other ones? Or
yes, she did. It's incredible, and it's her best looking film yet. And it's truly 100% her vision, and it's a really, really dark, beautiful, scary film. I would say if anything's a horror film, it's Cuddly Toys.
That's awesome.
Probably one of the most frightening films that I think people will be able to see, because it's both a fantasy and one of the realest films ever. I'll leave it at that for now. But so she produced all of the LA scenes in Spirit Riser, and I produced all of the New York scenes in Cuddly Toys. So that was a fun collaboration. Well, no, I guess not all of it. I produced most of the New York scenes.
Cool.
In Cuddly Toys. And I helped her with casting and locations and that kind of stuff. Got her some money for film reels. Yeah, so she is fantastic, and her and Parker are in it with Shuri, and they encounter them, and they encounter God. They meet God at one point. They meet there's a cult of just uncles, no nephews or nieces. It's just a bunch of uncles, and they're solemnly sworn to protect the supernatural. But yeah, anyway, it's a really kind of I would call it like Twin Peaks meets Stranger Things.
Nice,
if that makes sense. Like Twin Peaks season 3 meets Stranger Things. So really out there stuff. But then there's also this element of sort of 80s. Kind of almost Spielbergian nostalgia.
Nice.
And of course it's also very low budget, and so yeah, it goes kind of it's kind of a spiritual film. So it goes from being, there's a lot of moments of people kind of discovering things through psychic abilities in the astral plane, and there's this realm called the otherness that's very important to the film. Oh, and the villain of the film is played by Whitney Moore from Birdemic and many other films, and probably it's like you've never seen her before because she actually plays a male character and is in prosthetics. And I would say she does such a good job. She could easily be the next Lon Chaney.
That's awesome. Other than like feature films, you also you make a ton of music videos, and I always see you on the socials. Like, not only are you making music videos for your solo projects, for your bands, but you also are always on the grind looking for other people's music videos to make.
Well, that's my job. That's what I do for a living, is I direct music videos.
And I will say, if anybody out there wants a unique original video, they should definitely hit you up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about some of the videos you've made.
Well, I've done videos for I've done some videos for Death Valley Girls, which we shot in LA actually with Kansas and Parker, and I've done videos for Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum, which is a band with Matt Katz-Bowen and Peter Yanowitz and Michael C. Hall.
How did you get hooked up doing their videos? Because it seemed like the videos you did for them, like, didn't Rolling Stone write about them?
Yes, yeah, yes.
That was great. How'd you get involved with doing their videos?
Well, I've been friends with Matt Katz-Bowen, who's also the keyboardist for Blondie, and he's the keyboardist in Princess Goes. He's one busy guy, but I've been friends with him since I was a teenager, and he's actually in a bunch of my movies. He's in Dark Prism, and he's in Wakers, and he contributed music to ReAgitator. He had a band with Laurel Katz-Bowen called Pastel Confession, and they did a song for ReAgitator called Mysterious, which plays during the end credits and during a scene where the monster Ogroth attacks the city. But yeah, I mean, they had me pitch them a concept, and they liked the concept, and then we went ahead and made that concept a reality.
And you've done two videos for him, if I'm not, at least two, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. One is more of a a narrative. I mean, it's very weird, but it's a narrative video. The other one was more of an experiment where they wanted to just be shot on green screen, and then their idea was to then let the fans put whatever they wanted behind them.
And how is were they to direct? Because Michael Hall, like, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Is he, and your ideas are pretty out there. Was he pretty receptive to?
Yeah. I mean, when we did Nevertheless, which is the video which has all my bells and whistles in it.
Yeah.
He was pretty into it. I would say he actually had some ideas that he contributed that actually made the video even a little stranger.
Nice.
He's an offbeat guy. I mean, he's a very offbeat guy, and he's certainly not afraid to get weird.
That's awesome. And I like that you have the TV from ReAgitator.
Oh yeah, well, that TV makes appearances in almost all of my movies.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, that's a pretty fun Easter egg for watching all your stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's my TV. That's made appearances in a lot of my music videos, a lot of my features. But yeah, that's like a signature thing of mine. I actually painted that TV. I believe it's a Hitachi brand television from 1984. Still works great. And I've had that TV since I was a teenager. I painted it. I found it on the side of the street, and I painted it. I wrote boob tube on it, and I just decided from that point forward, anytime someone's watching TV in one of my movies, I want it to be that TV.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciated that was in there. It was a fun Easter egg.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and then you're also directing a video from my first guest, Richard Taylor, for his band Belonium.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's right.
And I gotta like nerd out a little bit because I'm in the video, and then you also got Lloyd and Robert Pritchard, who is the original Cretan from Class of Nukem High.
That's right. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's been in several of my films, and he is actually a big proponent of performance art. And after acting in Troma films and acting in some other films for Richard Haynes, who co-directed Class of Nukem High, he started a venue in the 1990s called Surf Reality that was actually a huge game changer and brought a lot of really, really, really offbeat stuff to New York in the 90s. And now he's sort of, Surf Reality doesn't exist anymore, but he's kind of taken that same sort of ethic and applied it to a radio station called Radio Free Brooklyn. That's now probably one of the biggest online radio stations in the city, I would say, at this point.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see the final product on there. I'm sure they're
very much into anything offbeat and weird. They are very much supportive of on Radio Free Brooklyn. It's a totally people funded endeavor. It's not there's no corporate sponsors, so they can get as weird as they want. Robert Butcher is actually a very, very crucial artist to the New York City scene. Him and Reverend Jen did a lot of stuff together. That's actually how I first met him, was through Reverend Jen.
That's so cool. So it's a small Troma world out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and then I also want to talk about like some of your music. So I was fortunate enough, you were playing like a one-off show out here in Denver with your band Theophobia, and that might be one of the most like, it was just so entertaining and fun to watch you and Matt Ellen, who he plays guitar, and it was just nuts. You had your microphone taped to like a shotgun and you were singing in the barrel of the shotgun and pointing it at the crowd to have us sing along. It was so much fun.
Thank you.
You also have several music videos for the band, which are as unique as each song.
Yeah, I think, at this point, I think I've directed all the videos for Theophobia. And yet, what's funny is that the gun was actually, because we had that, it was a prop we were using, because I actually did a video for another band called, I think, Easy Lovin', while we were in Denver, and they have a song called Sniper. And we were using the video as a prop for that band, which actually, the video stars Matt and Richard and Bonnie, and they're all actually in the video with the band Easy Lovin'. Anyway, I've done I don't know how many videos we have, maybe like 5 or so, but I guess the one I'm most proudest of, just in terms of directing, is probably The Loop, because I feel like it's a really beautiful, pretty beautiful video. And we actually shot some of Will You Love Me When I'm Dead while we were in Denver, because we were staying at Matt's aunt's place, and he had this very kind of modern looking pool, and I thought it would be interesting to shoot some stuff at this really modern looking pool, because it reminded me of this pool in the Grace Jones music video for Slave to the Rhythm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And which was the video where you and Matt have the prosthetics on your face?
That's the same video.
Okay, yeah.
That's Will You Love Me When I'm Dead. That was a combination of Cy Bedrick, who's one of the premier makeup artists in New York City, actually really wanted to work with us, and we were lucky enough to get to work with Cy. And Cy applied the prosthetics to us, and then my partner Glitter Macabre kind of color coded each character that we were in. Like sort of my character is all pink, and they actually added all of this pink makeup and this pink wardrobe and all of this really specific styling, and then blue for Matt. So everything for Matt is blue. Everything for me was pink. So it creates this really distinct contrast.
And the makeup on you guys is incredible. Like when you think,
yeah, I mean that's Cy. That's Cy Bedrick.
Yeah, when you think of like kind of low budget, like it does not come across that way at all in the video.
Yeah, again, that's because we were lucky to work with Cy and Hex, Glitter Macabre. I mean, the combination of them was just dynamite.
And can you tell us a little more about like the sound of Theophobia, because it's very unique. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. We're very inspired by. I mean, what's funny is if anyone's familiar with these two acts, it actually makes so much more sense. But we're very inspired by Sparks, and we're inspired by the music of Jim Steinman.
I was gonna say I feel a lot of Jim Steinman.
Right. See, now you know who Jim Steinman is, but a lot of people don't. Some people don't even know who Meatloaf is. People who are our age.
That's
so
not okay.
Yeah. So people hear our stuff and they genuinely don't know where the hell, because then they ask us where's your sound come from, and we say Sparks and Jim Steinman, and they're like, who the hell are I? Although I usually can say, well, Jim Steinman wrote Total Eclipse of the Heart, and so even if they don't know Meatloaf, they probably know Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just in wider press releases, we say Sparks meets Meatloaf, or if Meatloaf went to art school, because people don't always even know who Sparks is. Though at this point, Sparks is becoming a little more mainstream because
with the documentary.
There was sort of the summer of Sparks, where the documentary came out and then Annette came out, which is their movie that they wrote all the music for, and it stars Adam Driver. So those two things kind of came out as like a 1-2 punch, and then suddenly their audience expanded a bit. But they're still, they're much bigger at this point in the United Kingdom than they are in the US. Those are absolutely our two major influences for sure. And then I mean, there's a lot of other stuff we're inspired by, and we have a song coming out soon that's very, very inspired by just Italo disco in general, and kind of Self-Control by Laura Branigan. It's actually very inspired by that, but there are still some nods to Sparks in the song. Yeah. We actually have a synth riff that sounds it's very much an homage to their song When I'm With You, and but yeah, that's going to be our next single. But yeah, I mean, those are our main influences are Sparks. And then on a larger scale, I mean, we're sort of a combination of an 80s new wave and a 70s glam rock band. Yeah. Both of which, of course, are extremely theatrical types of music that you don't hear as much anymore necessarily. So we're kind of...
That's amazing.
We also have this very theatrical aesthetic, and we sort of play these characters that are almost like fictionalized versions of ourselves on the stage. And yeah, we have kind of we have sort of a whole routine.
I think that's what made it so refreshing for me to hear your songs and all that, because it's not something you hear every day. And like, Will You Love Me When I'm Dead is just an absolute banger. Like, it's... Thank you. Awesome.
Well, Matt wrote that one, actually. That I wrote a few of the lyrics, but for the most part, Matt actually, it's funny that's been one of our biggest, quote unquote hits. I mean, when you're an indie artist, it's like, I mean, below indie artists, it's like, how do you really have a hit necessarily? But that one was primarily Matt wrote the song, and Matt composed most of the synthesizers on it. And then, I added a few flourishes, and I wrote some of the lyrics, but for the most part, that's a Matt song. Our two biggest quote unquote hits are that and Love of Ages, which I did play the synths on, and I did the arrangement, but Matt wrote that song. It's actually a remake of an acoustic song that Matt recorded years before. Yeah, those have kind of been our two most successful songs so far.
And then another song that you guys did, kind of wrapping stuff around, is you did the theme song for #Shakespeare Shitstorm.
That's right. That was actually technically the first song that we ever recorded as a band.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that was a little bit more rough around the edges because I actually produced that song, the whole thing. But yeah, that was more of like a lo-fi sort of jam session that then I sort of then worked on kind of mixing it so it sounded a little bit more high fidelity. But yeah, that was kind of, I mean, it started with me recording it as a solo single before Theophobia was really fully formed. When I was in Albania shooting Shitstorm, I actually recorded a lot of the vocals in my hotel room. And then Lloyd said it needs more instrumentation. It needs to sound much bigger. So so Matt and I were kind of in the very beginning stages of Theophobia by that point, but that was almost a year later. So I said to Matt, you know, could we record this together and maybe this could be our first song as Theophobia? And so it kind of became this jam session of Matt and me and Matt's friend Philip, who was playing violin underneath everything, you know, and that's kind of the first recorded song that then Matt and I were doing vocals. Matt does backing vocals on that, and we have a lot of instrumentation on that, Matt's guitar and all that. But yeah, I think there's actually a very low, I also play guitar in it. Like it's kind of a weird song. Like I play acoustic actually, like it's kind of a rhythm thing, and then Matt plays electric, and then there's like this kind of undercurrent of a violin. But yeah, I mean, it's very inspired by Sparks. It's kind of inspired by Armies of the Night by Sparks a bit. Yeah, so that was our first thing that we recorded, even though it actually came out after everything else.
And how cool is that? Like that song is gonna go down as one of like the classic theme songs from a Troma movie.
Thank you. I sure hope so. I appreciate that.
Like it's right up there with the Nukem High song. And
thank you. Yeah, that was definitely my intention. Was I love the Nukem High song. Obviously, I love new wave, and I wanted to make something really powerful.
I will say, like, about Troma soundtracks, as much as I love them, they are a lot of punk and metal. So it really set you guys like us, you know, in a completely different space than
for
typical. Sure. So it like stands out in a good way.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the movie, the song doesn't come in until the very end. Like, not even in the beginning of the end credits. You have to wait a bit during the end credits because there's some post credit scenes, or not post. There's like scenes that happen during the credits.
Yeah.
And then when those scenes are done, that's when the song starts. But you hear an instrumental version of the song earlier in the film, so it kind of sets the tone. And then it kind of bursts into the end. But what's cool is that the whole thing plays uninterrupted. So at least we got that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you know, hopefully people, I mean, yeah, we've definitely gotten good reception on it. And, you know, hopefully people who actually, because there is an end credits, there is a post-credits scene, much like Marvel. So hopefully people recognize that and they actually sit through the credits and then they hear our song.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's where Samuel L. Jackson asks if people want to go fight the demon from Death by Temptation. I'm pretty sure.
Exactly.
The post credit.
Exactly.
And I think for a treat, I want to play Theophobia's #Shakespeare Shitstorm theme song to close out the show. Kind of on the topic of Troma, how did you start working for Troma?
There was actually a program at my school that if you had your grades in order, you could actually spend the remainder of the senior semester interning for another company instead of going to school, except on Fridays. You had to go to school on Friday. I was just very persistent. I was already making my second feature film, Wakers. So I think it started with, I kept calling Troma and asking if I could put Lloyd in one of my movies. And it took a long time. And I think at first they were like, you know, maybe your next movie, we don't know if Lloyd's around. And I kept pushing.
Yeah.
Because I was young and I was very naive and I was like 17. I just kept pushing. Finally, they said yes. And I think while I was there, I asked if I could also start being an observer volunteer. And then and then kind of as I was working there, even before school was over for me, they actually hired me on as a temp because they were doing a Kickstarter campaign, and they hired me to do a lot of the media for that. And then basically like a week before I graduated, they were like, "Do you just want to work here like full time?" Because what sucked is that summer was coming. And I actually said, hey, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to find like a summer job at like a fucking frozen yogurt stand or something. And they were like, "Why don't you just work here?"
Like,
So that's basically how I started my career in the film business.
What was your
And I never
title?
went to, what?
Did you have a title?
I maybe assistant editor, but I was primarily doing internet stuff. So I think it kind of went from assistant editor to more like online content, like creator, because then I started filming. I was filming and editing stuff at a certain point, and I was handling a lot of their special feature stuff for their Blu-rays and DVDs. And like a lot of the Troma intros I was doing, and then Troma Now was launched while I worked there. So I kind of became it became my job to do a lot of the media promoting Troma Now.
And I think that's where I first saw you was in some of those online promotions, like back when Troma used to have everything on YouTube. You would pop up in the videos quite a bit. I remember that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's sort of where I came from. And yeah, I mean, that was my film school. I had some scholarships to film schools, and I just was very skeptical about the college experience. I was kind of dreading it. I didn't really want to go to college, and like my parents had me sit in front. I was sat in front of the student loan papers. Even though I had scholarships, I still would have had to take out loans because college is so expensive. Even with scholarships, you still have to pay for all the bullshit. And earlier that day, they had offered me a job at Troma, and I said I'd think about it. And I kind of said, I think I just want to work at Troma. Like, I don't really think I want to go to college. I really don't vibe with school in general. Because I would always get good grades for my work, but bad grades for my behavior. Because I was a little bit I guess I was considered a bit of a troublemaker. I don't know. When I disagreed with someone at high school, I was pretty vocal about it, and I think they didn't like that. And I don't know. I just didn't like the whole atmosphere. There's this one guy who's above you, and I always kind of felt like, if I have to do everything you say, I should be getting paid for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how I started working at Troma.
And do you have any like favorite like shorts or just like videos that you produced or made for Troma that people should go check out?
I mean, I think one of my favorite things I worked on was I did some of the shooting for, and I edited Kabuki Con, which was a video that John Brennan produced for his Kabuki Man Cocktail Corner show, where Kabuki Man goes to Comic-Con. And I'm a really big fan of like the Eric Andre show and all that stuff. And John basically said I could have completely free reign of the editing process, and I could make it however I wanted. So I was just like, I'm going to make the most insane like thing ever. Like, it's just going to be completely ridiculous. And it's going to be like an episode of the Eric Andre show. I'm going to have people's heads flying around, and like I'm gonna have like fucking Hebrew music like playing in it, and like stock photos of people like playing the flute, like flying around, and just like make it like completely like there's a part where it zooms out and it says Comic-Con building here, and it's like a rock with a window in it, and then it like explodes. And I actually found like an educational film from the 50s that had a car that looked like the car from Kabuki Man, and there's like a part where like Kabuki Man's fighting Doctor Strange, and then like the laser comes out of Kabuki Man, and then it comes out of Comic-Con, and then it goes into the 50s educational film about an automobile, and then it explodes and it turns into the Kabuki Man car. So I would say if there's one thing I really remember from that time, it's editing Kabuki Con. I think it's so funny. So yeah, I'd recommend people check that out for sure.
That's awesome. And then you mentioned that you were working on Kickstarter with Troma. I assume that was for Return to Nukem High Volume 2.
Yes, and I did a lot of some of the post-production work on that, and I show up in it a few times. I get my nose ripped off in it as a human being, and then I also played the duck monster in a few scenes.
Oh wow!
Not
cool.
Not all of them, but some of them.
But that's still cool.
Yeah.
And then how did it come about that you got one of the leading characters in Shitstorm?
Well, I mean, I was certainly encouraged to audition, but it actually was not as easy as just, I know Lloyd, he's going to give me a role in the movie.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, they called me to do it and they said, oh my God, this role is fucking perfect for me. I really want to play this role. And I actually did a reading of it at the Pit, which was this improv theater. And they did a live script reading there. And a lot of the cast members doing the reading were not, some of them ended up being in it, but some of them were also, they were either in different roles or there were actors playing certain characters that ended up not playing those characters. So it was not like just because you do the reading, you're going to get cast in the movie.
Yeah.
So basically after I did that, I said, obviously I'd love to audition. I'd love to be this. And so there were something like almost 10 auditions that I had to do. And at first, believe it or not, they actually paired me up with Amanda, and Amanda was Steph.
Oh, wow.
And we did a reading as Steph and Trini with Amanda as Steph. And I remember Amanda used to live in Staten Island, and I remember we were rehearsing at her house in Staten Island. And then, they ended up changing it so Zoe Geltman was Steph, and then Amanda was Ariel, which I think was the right move because, Amanda's now getting these rave reviews for her performance as Ariel.
She's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I would say she's the standout actor in the movie, Frank. I mean, her and Kate McGarrigle, I would say, and Monique Dupree, I would say, are like kind of the breakout, big, very charismatic, far more. I mean, my performance was fun, but I think, Amanda really stole the show, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And there's that great big photo of her in the New York Times, which I think is well deserved. Which they actually gave Shitstorm a pretty good review. The New York Times.
That was a really it was kind of.
I was
funny
really surprised.
Leading up to that, Lloyd was like, "The New York Times, fuck them. They've never said a good thing about us." And then I was
I think maybe they wanted to prove Lloyd wrong, and they actually liked the movie.
And it wasn't like a typical backhanded review that Troma always gets, where it's like, it was good for a Troma movie. It was a genuinely sweet review.
Yeah, no, they definitely liked the movie. But anyway, so I did a bunch of auditions. I remember, I mean, most notably, I remember the first audition isn't even, you're not even reading from the script. The first audition is you come in with your own monologue. And I decided to do the fucking scary tunnel scene from Willy Wonka. Because I was like, that is so representative of Trini. Is if I do the scary tunnel scene from Willy Wonka. So I did the whole thing, and then at the end I just started screaming and writhing around on the floor. And so that got me a call back. And then I remember, I think it might have been during my auditions with Amanda, but somewhere along the line, I decided to bring a bunch of chocolate cake to the audition. And I auditioned when the whales are supposed to be shitting on us. I just started smashing the chocolate cake into my face. So I just wanted to keep doing outrageous stuff so that they, they'd remember me, you know, because it was other people deciding it, not just Lloyd.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to, you know, do something that stuck out. And obviously I'd worked for Troma, so I knew that there was a certain vibe that they wanted.
And can you tell me a bit of the set life? So you went to Albania with them. How long was that shoot?
That was like a week, I think. A week, 2 weeks, something like that. But yeah, I mean, the only parts I'm in Albania are on the top of the boat. But that might have been the longest shoot for one scene in a Troma film. Like, or at least in that Troma film. Because in New York, it was like, you know, you have like a day for each scene for the most part, but you know, usually multiple scenes shot in one day. But that was because that scene is so elaborate.
Yeah.
And they needed a real boat. Well, they needed what they needed was a combination of a real boat and a mock-up of a real boat. So what's incredible is that there's both a real boat in the film and there's a mock-up of the entire upper deck of the boat that was built outside on a backlot in front of a giant outdoor green screen. And in the film, you cannot tell the difference between the set of the boat and the real boat. It was loaded onto like springs. It was some real Hollywood shit.
That's
like
awesome.
They had it on these poles, and there were production assistants, but like pushing the poles up and down to make the boat rock. So it was, and that's really when like all the shit gets on us. They used the replica set. And then when like we're in the storm and there's a hole in the ship, that's the replica boat. But then in the wide shots and when you see and before the storm is happening, it's a real boat that's actually in the middle of the Adriatic Sea. But I was really impressed because when they said there's going to be parts on green screen, I said, oh God, it's going to look rinky dink. It's going to be like a pole that we're hanging on to, and then they're going to put the rest of it behind us. It's going to look like garbage. And then I get there and it's like, because the exchange rate is so good in Albania that they were able to get a real boat and get the CGI for the whales and get a crew and get the replica set of the boat built on this backlot for like $40,000.
Whoa.
Which, you know, I mean, for me, that's a lot of money, but for a full-fledged film production, that's a pretty good deal. You know, they probably charge $200,000 in New York just to set foot on a boat with a camera.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, we had two different versions of the boat.
That's so cool.
But yeah, and it was pretty incredible. We had a rain machine going for the replica boat. So you really, in the final cut, you absolutely can't. I mean, I challenge anyone watching to try and spot the difference between the real boat and the fake boat. Like next time anyone watches it, try and see, okay, this is the real boat, this is the fake boat. But whoever built it, I mean, it was the crew in Albania, but it was built perfectly to scale. I mean, they must have studied how those Coast Guard boats look, because it was the exact same layout. There was no continuity issues.
I honestly had no idea until just now that there was a fake boat.
Yeah, no one knows. It's seriously one of the most monumentous effects I've ever been part of. It was pretty incredible.
And it sounds like one of the more...
They couldn't spill all that shit onto the real boat because it's owned by the military.
So the Coast Guard didn't want actual shit on the boat.
Yeah, and there were military guys on the boat. They were completely bewildered by what the fuck was going on. But we were covered in shit on the real boat, but they put these like styrofoam pieces of shit on the ground on the real boat, but they didn't actually get it dirty.
Yeah.
So it was the fake boat that they just completely trashed and had rain machines going and hydraulic hose with shit and a piece of fake corn like hit me in the face. And I actually got a fat lip from that because it was moving at such a speed that it actually hit me so hard.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
and then it went back to New York City to film the rest of it. How long was the rest of the shoot?
The rest of the shoot was like maybe 2 months, I think, for me at least. I mean, there's other pickup stuff I did, and there's also I wasn't there for every single day because I'm not, I'm kind of a subplot in the film.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to have, one of the most, I literally am in the shitstorm. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm the main character. So but yeah, I remember it being like 2 months spread out. And then in between those 2 months, I was, pretty much every day I had off, I was directing music videos for other people, or I was also at the time I was doing a lot of extra stuff. So it's funny. I'd go from like being in shitstorm to then being like an extra on like, not Sex in the City. It's there was a show Younger that kept having me be extras. It's funny. I actually met a bunch of the cast members who ended up being in Spirit Riser on Younger. But yeah, so it was kind of like back and forth between that and then doing videos and then going back and being in Shitstorm. But another really inventive thing in Shitstorm, in the New York scenes, and this is very much in part due to John Brennan being a really inventive producer, is that they found this location that is one half of it looks like a nightclub and the other half of it looks like the interior of a ship. And it had these big mirrors that were already there that looked like portholes. So they covered them up with posters, but they covered the mirror part up with posters.
Yeah.
And then they built a false wall. And then behind the false wall, they actually had Eric Fox and Melissa working on all the body horror stuff in the back, right behind the false wall in the interior of the ship. But it's the same exact club.
That's awesome.
For the interior of the ship in the beginning, and then Prospero's retreat. It's literally you walk through a door and you're in the other part. And what they did was whenever we were shooting in the fake ship interior, we had holding in the other side of the nightclub, and then whenever we were shooting in the nightclub, the other room was holding. So it was a really brilliant process.
That's awesome.
It was very streamlined. Yeah, really, really efficient, high production value stuff. Like, they got 2 sets for the price of one, basically.
I've seen it already, but I need to see it with a crowd because it is an absolutely bonkers movie. Like,
it's a pretty bonkers movie, yeah.
And definitely seeing it with an audience. That is, if anybody out there has the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think it's the most fun to see with like a bunch of people like screaming.
Yeah, because there's some rowdy stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I think on that, I think we should dive into this episode.
Speaking of bonkers movies.
Yeah, speaking of bonkers movies, let's dive into the 1992 Troma live-action animated film directed by Toby Zoates, Virgin Beasts.
Show you a 20th century bestiary.
My science has worked true. You may find a treasure that will lead to the greatest treasure of them all. A golden cup that grants the wish that any drinker may make. And it dwells up yonder in heaven, in the throne room of the Golden Tower.
And she who bears that cup before her shall lead the way to heal all wounds.
I need that cup to get my empire back in full swing again.
All you've got to do is climb the 10,000 bloody steps, break through the germ-free barrier, and stuff up that decadent elite sealed within.
Oh, Rebel! Daddy wouldn't like that.
My history with Virgin Beast was I was aware of the movie because on Poultrygeist, the head blood boy, he was from Australia, and Lloyd had somebody who worked at the office send him a DVD to set to give to him. He was like, "Hey, we have this movie that is made by an Australian filmmaker, and it's actually really cool." And he gave it to him, and then after that's it. That I never heard anything more about the movie after that. I've seen the case around. I just never picked it up. And then I when I asked you to what movie you wanted to talk about on the show, you suggested Virgin Beast. So this is a first time watch for me, and I'm really glad you suggested this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie a lot.
What's your history with this one? How did you see it the first time?
I would take advantage of any free time I had when I was working at Troma, and would go through their library of films because they had a lot of their DVDs in the office. So I love anything that combines animation with live action. I love anything that has kind of that underground animation aesthetic, like it kind of almost looks like underground comics, in some scenes. So I was immediately hooked, and I think I watched it during some off time, just in the office, and I was just blown away. I was like, I wish more people knew about this one because it's so out there and cool. And I started looking up Toby Zoates and stuff, and I was like, this is one really innovative guy.
Yeah, he's like, his art style is very much like old punk rock flyers from like
Definitely.
the 80s.
Which he made. I think he did a lot of punk rock flyers.
And you could definitely tell. And then like almost like that mixed with like if Mad Magazine was drawn with Sharpies. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like it's such a cool style. And I've looked around. He has some other short films on YouTube. But what's cool is before Virgin Beast, they do have one of his short films, The Thief of Sydney, which plays right before.
What's interesting is that plays in both in the DVD and on Troma now, I think, and it's just one file, I think. Yeah,
I'm sure they just ripped the Troma now from the DVD.
Yeah.
But the short is pretty neat. We should talk about that before we really get into Virgin Beast. So it definitely gets you prepared for what you're about to see with Virgin Beast. It's it's a little more tame, but there's a lot of rotoscoping going on with these. It's basically there's some homeless guys who are smoking weed in like the Sydney Harbor, and then they start imagining if it was a post-apocalyptic world. And I will say this about the Virgin Beast and the Thief of Sydney is there is definitely a plot, but it is super abstract and kind of hard to talk about.
I mean, the basic idea is that in Virgin Beast, there's this politician that he's dying, and he wants to steal the heart an indigenous person who's in the same hospital. Like his men want to transplant the heart from that guy into him so that they can prolong, his shitty life because he's powerful and rich and the indigenous guy is not. And then they're both kind of having this near-death experience, and they both kind of become these fantasy versions of themselves, and they turn into fish at one point, and they turn back into people, and they go on this kind of spiritual journey.
Yeah, and they're like dolphins, and it's like a rock opera.
Yeah, right. They turn into dolphins. Yeah, right. And it's a rock opera. But it kind of goes between that and it's sort of, at that point it becomes a little more abstract, but it's a lot of statements. I mean, like Lloyd's films, it gets kind of political because I think it's very much about, classism and class hierarchy, and it's about, I think, like spirituality and how that intersects with it. They have Jesus in it, but Jesus is evil and he kills people.
But what's also kind of neat, like, about this movie is, like, you could tell a lot of work went into it, and it was a passion project, because all of the animation is rotoscoped and hand drawn, and I don't think they had the budget to get any sort of tools to make it easier. And
no, that's all by hand for sure.
And Toby Zoates was like the animator. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure he just did all of that himself. No, it's a pretty remarkable achievement.
And one of the things I liked in the short film before, which definitely just kind of set the tone for everything, there's like a weird gargoyle that comes out, and he just looks at the camera, and it's like a cartoon gargoyle, and he's like, I don't know what's going on either, and then he just like walks off. But yeah, in Virgin Beasts, there was a movie that Troma put out that it kind of reminded me of, which was Fatty Drives the Bus. Funny enough, I've never seen that, actually. It took me 2 watches to appreciate that movie, but this movie reminded me of Fatty Drives the Bus, not so much humor wise, but just the DIY like filmmaking where you get like everybody to show up to make this movie.
Yeah, and, for sure.
And the effects in this movie they're very much DIY. Like, they have monsters that aren't animated, but you could tell like they made like these rubber masks as best as they could, with like probably like couch foam and spray paint and duct tape. But it works in this movie. Like, it doesn't seem out of place.
I mean, it's like Pee-wee's Playhouse or something where the aesthetic works if everything is part of the same aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing feels out of place in this movie, which is kind of fun. And then when they're dolphins and like swimming around, because they get zapped into a dolphin tuna commercial, basically, when he the politician dies on like the operating bed, and so you're just swimming around in the sea with these dolphins, and you see whales with huge dicks singing songs, and
that part's great.
And mermaids just with their genitalia on full display for everybody swimming around, and there's giant crab monsters, and it's like it's just so unique. Like, I've not really seen too much else like this, but there wasn't like a boring frame in this entire movie.
No, definitely not. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love it. I mean, it's a maximalist masterpiece, in my opinion.
One of like the cool things about this movie is like, so there's a scene where the dolphins, they turn back into like, kind of like the better looking versions of their human forms, and they're just they found a really sweet looking like tunnel location, and these guys are walking through with these torches and tunnels, and then they just have random torture scenes, and you think that they're using Australian slang. They're like, oh, to get to where we need to go, we have to climb 10,000 bloody steps, but it's actually like 10,000 steps that are just covered in blood that And they'll like cut people in the torture chamber. Somebody will get hurt, but all the blood that comes out of them is animated, except
It's
for
so
like,
cool.
yeah. And
It also reminds me a lot of Forbidden Zone,
yes, yeah,
which is also one of my favorite movies ever of all time.
when they're in heaven, it, Jesus Jesus is there, and he's kind of a nut job, and he's like I will let you people eat my flesh and drink my blood in exchange for entertainment. And so he like gets some slaves, which they look like slaves from like a Guar show, to fight each other with spiked tennis rackets.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of all of this, just like one of the main dolphin guy, Blow, he runs in and does like this like guitar solo. And I was, because it's like, where's this scene going? And then he runs in with a guitar solo. It's like, that's a pretty awesome way to, if you don't know how to write yourself out of a scene.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, the movie, it's just so weird. Like it just jumps back and forth from real life to this kind of fantasy, partially animated live action world. But like in real life, they're doing like these heart transplants, and Blow, the main character, his heart catches on fire on a cart, and there's like this crazy keep away game.
Yeah.
Like just down all the, it's so weird. Like it doesn't make sense to explain it, because you know, like two minutes later, these dolphins are flying on the back of a dragon.
It's so cool. It's just like, it's everything I could possibly want in a movie.
When I was watching the movie, I was like, I totally get why this movie stuck with you, for you to recommend it, because it reminds me a lot of your style.
And I just love projects where it's obvious there's no limit on the creator's imagination.
Yeah, it's, I like, for instance, I'll throw this spoiler out there. The black guy who is a dolphin, he fights Rosebud, the sled from Citizen Kane, on his penis. So
cool. I don't know if he's, I mean, maybe he's, I think he's supposed to be Aboriginal.
They call him, they refer to him as the black guy at the beginning of the movie, okay. And then halfway through they call him Aboriginal.
Well, I guess you can be both.
Yeah. But yeah, I
do think that is very much like a statement on, colonialism, and how they're literally trying to take the guy's heart.
Where especially, I'm sure we're both speaking a little out of school, just Australian, politics, but I have a feeling
also it would make a little more sense if you're Australian.
There seem like a lot of inside kind of references like that in there, where it's like, oh, maybe dragons in Australia turn into penises. That's like a thing there that's not anywhere else. But I don't know. I haven't played that expansion on Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hard movie to describe, but I have not been this excited watching a movie in a long time either, where it was just so different and original, and the sky was the limit for whatever Toby Zoates wanted to do in this movie, and he did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any final thoughts on Virgin Beasts?
No, other than I hope more people see it, because I think it's a really great film, and certainly anyone who's a fan of animation or underground comics, or stuff like Robert Crumb, Fritz the Cat, Ralph Bakshi. Yeah, I think this is a must-see film for anyone who's a fan of those kinds of things.
I agree. You need to watch this movie, especially if you're an animation fan. you need to watch it. I have a clip that I'm gonna play real quick of Toby Zoates talking about Troma distributing his movie.
An interesting thing for me was I signed that film over to a company in New York called Troma, and I thought I'd become a millionaire because they got videos in every video shop in the world, but sadly enough they never gave me any money. But what they did do was show that film absolutely everywhere. And for instance, I just got a letter from them the other day. I still owe them $59,777, which really annoys me. Like, I owe them after 21 years, but they've just shown it on cable television in Canada. And I mean, you know, it's amazing that in all these years that film has just shown everywhere, and I feel pleased that here I am virtually on Skid Row in Sydney, which is par for the course for most artists anyway. I mean, I've always lived this way, so it's not as if I can rue the loss of a wonderful, luxurious life, but I'm very happy that a bum like me, my artwork got out of a place called Down Under, Oz, and it got all around the world. It's pretty fantastic.
Alrighty, so it's Virgin Beast Night in your theater. What movie are you picking for your double feature?
Okay, so now that you bring it up, because we still haven't necessarily decided the double feature, but in terms of what would fit really well with that aesthetic, I would say it would be Forbidden Zone.
Yeah.
Just keep saying to yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie that will have you living in the sixth dimension, moving in the wrong direction. A new fantasy, musical, comedy. The Forbidden Zone.
When we were talking about that earlier, I totally it's like that would be a really good double.
Yeah, I mean, because I had proposed actually talking about Adam the Amazing Zombie Killer, which I think is a brilliant film.
Thank you.
Actually, I think there are even some similarities with Virgin Beasts because it's also kind of a film about hallucination. And I love that it completely flips the zombie genre on its head. And it's about a guy, basically hallucinating to the point where he has a murderous victim complex and thinks everyone is a zombie that's about to eat him and then starts murdering people. And I love the idea that the zombies, not only are they not the monsters, they are literally just people, and the guy is just insane. I've never seen a movie do that before. It reminds me of Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to at least mention that because I think Adam the Amazing Zombie Killer is a very good movie. And I really like how it turns zombie tropes on its head. I typically don't even. It's just there's so many zombie movies that I have kind of a preconceived stigma where anytime I see a zombie movie, I'm like, oh God, it's another fucking zombie movie. Someone made this, it's either low budget, someone made this shit in their backyard, or it's, because they're cheap to make and they put a bunch of their friends in zombie makeup, or, it's a medium budget to high budget, 28 Days Later / Walking Dead ripoff.
Well, I think that the funny thing about Adam is it kind of exactly what you said, because we were tired of the same old zombie movie over and over.
And it's completely different than anything.
But what the problem was the people who would appreciate the movie, who would love a spin on a zombie movie, or like, this looks like another one of those shitty backyard zombie movies, so they didn't watch it. And the people who are only about those shitty backyard zombie movies are like, this isn't a zombie movie.
Right.
But so he made the perfect
I think it certainly deserves an audience. So I want to at least bring that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say in terms of a film that you'd want to watch right after Virgin Beasts, I mean, yeah, either Forbidden Zone or like something, one of those X-rated animated films from the 70s.
Yeah. So for my double, I had a really hard time because Virgin Beasts is so unique, and I was like really drawn to thinking of like Bashki feels appropriate, but his stuff feels also too linear, like to work
in a way. I mean, I think he's kind of he tells stories in kind of an offbeat way, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little more I mean, also heavy metal.
Yeah.
There's definitely similarities to heavy metal for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I was like, oh, maybe like American Pop or Wizards, but then like the more I kept thinking about it, what this reminded me of would have been the feature at the end of Spike and Mike's Festival of Animation.
Which I don't know about that.
So way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was these two guys, Spike and Mike, and they would program these animation film festivals, and they were very DIY and punk rock. They'd play like in rock and roll clubs. They're like, they like were the first people to show Frog Baseball, the Beavis and Butthead short.
Cool.
They were the first people to show the Whoop-Ass Girls before they became the Powerpuff Girls.
Wow, I had no idea they used to be called the Whoop-Ass Girls, actually.
Yeah, it's pre like Adult Swim. There's still like Liquid Television on MTV, but these were...
Does Liquid Television still exist?
In my heart, it does.
Right. I was going to say, I'm looking for someone to fund another like animated short for me to do, and I'm having trouble. I wish there was more stuff like that,
And that was one of the nice things about Spike and Mike, was they would look for animators, and it felt very Troma Dance before Troma Dance, where they went out looking for, it didn't matter if it was like a highbrow animated art film or if it was a Bill Plimpton cartoon that nobody saw yet. They wanted it all, and they would play in punk rock clubs around the country. And I was lucky enough to go to some of them, and Spike and Mike, they would always be in Park City, and Lloyd introduced me a few times, and he's like, Spike and Mike's, their Festival of Animation is, one of the true independent things out here in Park City. And it really was. And this movie would have fit in perfectly with a night of just like weirdo animated shorts.
Yeah, for sure.
I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't play some of Toby Zoates' shorts. It seems like something that would have.
They certainly should have. I would say the closest thing we have now to something like that is we have Night Flight Plus, which is a streaming service. And I actually have both a film I made, The Bathtub, which is sort of an underground animated looking film like that. And we have The Puppeteer's Assistant is also on there now.
That's awesome. I've watched a few things. They have a lot of Devo stuff on.
Night Flight. Devo. I love Devo, obviously. But they have, I know not obviously, but I just feel like, I seem like the kind of person who would be a Devo fan,
right.
I feel like.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess going back to the double feature thing, I mean, I guess for anyone who doesn't know about Forbidden Zone, I would say watch. I mean, it's a great film. I would say watch it with some caution because it's, there's some kind of offensive stuff in it, that I don't necessarily agree with. Like there's use of blackface, which I don't agree with that. But I think in terms of visuals, it is a absolutely outstanding film, and I do think that Richard Elfman is an extremely talented director. Yeah, I mean, it's got great music, of course, by Oingo Boingo, and it's got a fantastic cast. I mean, Hervé Villechaize and Susan Tyrrell are just dynamite in the movie. Joe Spinell makes an appearance. Viva, the Warhol superstar. I mean, it's just such a great fucking movie, and it's short too. It's like 70 to 80 minutes, so it's like it just beat, and you get these great songs. It's everything from Oingo Boingo to then, you know, old 30s show tunes. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's my basic appeal to people to check out Forbidden Zone.
I kind of wanted now, like after when we're done recording, go pop that in, because it's like that does seem like a good.
It's a pretty incredible movie, and it works both in its colorized form, which was supervised by Richard Elfman. It's not. It's a weird film, you'd think, to colorize, because it's not like an old classic that they're colorizing. It's because that was his original artistic vision, was to film the movie in black and white and then colorize it so it looked like a cartoon. And that's what I think is so brilliant, is that it's a film with live actors that looks like a cartoon and at some point becomes animated. But it is a living, breathing cartoon, and I just think for the visuals alone, it's worth watching. But it's also, I mean, great music. I think it's very inventive film. Great example of, you know, getting a lot out of a small budget. You know, he truly persevered to make it. It was completely independently made. So yeah, I would definitely say good double feature with Virgin Beasts for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think on that we should start wrapping it up here. Where can people listen to your music or watch your films?
Well, my stuff's all over the place. I would say the best way to get updates and links to all my stuff is to follow me on Instagram. Dylan Mars Greenberg. That's my Instagram, and follow my band Theophobia on Instagram. And that is probably the best way to go to all my stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Bandcamp. My stuff is going to be a lot. My back catalog of my last 6 feature films, or maybe 5 feature films, because I don't think they're going to release the first one, but because Glamorous is not really a horror film. But the other films of mine, from Wakers to ReAgitator, I believe, are going to be released by Dark Side Entertainment in the coming months, I believe, and they'll be available on physical media for the first time, besides, you know, limited run VHS tapes and that kind of thing. And then I mean, you know, like I said, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll really be able to get the full thing. But yeah, I'm on Bandcamp. I'm on every major streaming service in terms of my music. Most of my films as of now are on Troma Now. I have some stuff on Night Flight Plus. I mean, a lot of the music videos I've directed are just all over the place on YouTube and you know, stuff like that. So yeah, all my links are pretty much through my Instagram. That's kind of where you can find basically everything. I really should make a website. I don't really have one right now. I had one for a while and I got overwhelmed, but I'm gonna probably make one in the next month or so. Awesome. But yeah, I mean, that's where you can find all my stuff.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lego Larry. You can find the show on Twitter at Talkin Troma. And as always, stay traumatized.